I'm Emily Whitmore, 32, former charity case, current CEO. Every morning, I drink espresso from a mug that reads, World's Okayest Daughter, in a corner office my father swore I'd never earn. The same office where I now keep Ryan's forged tax documents framed like modern art. They called me weak for caring about Detroit clinics instead of stock prices. Joke's on them. Grandma's secret clause made those clinics our most profitable division. Funny how useless looks in a Brioni suit. The truth is, I was never supposed to win this game. I was the daughter they kept hidden at charity galas, paraded when convenient, dismissed when inconvenient. My father, Daniel Whitmore, a narcissistic patriarch with a God complex, always said I was the emotional one, the charity case, while my brother Ryan was built for legacy. Ryan, the golden child with a cocaine problem, a Vegas tab, and a moral compass that spins like a roulette wheel. But it turns out, bloodlines only take you so far when your grandmother leaves behind a handwritten letter, a flash drive full of evidence, and a pocket watch that ticks like a countdown to justice. The day the will was read, I wasn't even supposed to be in the room. Ryan was already counting his inheritance. My father already rewriting the family narrative. But then Mr. Caldwell, our long-suffering family lawyer, cleared his throat and dropped the bombshell. A secret clause giving me 51% of Whitmore Holdings if my father attempted to disinherit me. I'll never forget how Daniel's face twisted when he realized the daughter, he publicly shamed now, had the final vote at every decisive shareholders meeting. That moment was the beginning of my silent revenge, the kind where you don't raise your voice, you raise the company's stock. It wasn't just about money. It was about breaking the cycle of abuse that ran through the Whitmore name like poison in porcelain. It was about watching the same men who humiliated me in boardrooms start sweating through their suits as I uncovered accounting fraud, alter reports, and emails that read like corporate suicide notes. And when the vote of no confidence came for Ryan, let's just say, he looked surprised. Not as surprised as when I offered him a retirement plan that came with a one-way ticket to a Caribbean rehab and a lifetime supply of regret. Sometimes we need to cool down and plan the big comeback. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel to follow more stories like mine. Well, the room smelled like aged leather and bitter coffee. Mr. Caldwell's office always did, but this time it felt more like a war room than a law firm. I sat across from my father, Daniel Whitmore, whose expression was carved in granite. Proud, cold, dismissive. The same look he wore when he called me a charity case in front of the entire board. I was still dressed in black from the funeral, still wearing the same modest blazer he mocked. Plebeian, he called it. Meanwhile, my brother Ryan looked like he had stepped out of a GQ cover shoot, all smug smirks and unearned confidence. He already thought he'd won. Then came the sound that changed everything. Mr. Caldwell clearing his throat. A small, polite noise, but in our family, it was a warning shot. Daniel, he began, pulling a yellowed envelope from his leather folder. Your mother included a secret clause in her will. I could almost hear my father's heart skip a beat. Ryan raised an eyebrow. I just blinked, slowly, while my stomach turned inside out. She specified. Caldwell continued. That should Emily be excluded from the inheritance, 51% of Whitmore Holdings would transfer to her, immediately and irrevocably. The silence that followed was the kind that hums in your bones. Ryan choked on his smirk. My father's fingers clenched the armrest so hard I swore I heard the leather groan. And me? I didn't smile. Not yet. Because I was too busy holding in a storm of emotions I didn't have words for: grief, shock, validation, and something colder. Something that might have been icy rage. Mr. Caldwell handed me a folded letter written in cursive so elegant it practically smelled of lavender and authority. I knew that handwriting anywhere, Eleanor Whitmore, my grandmother, my silent general, My dearest Emily, it began. If you're reading this, it means Daniel did exactly what I feared. Don't hate him. He was raised to think cruelty is strength. But you've always known better. Whitmore Holdings is yours now. Use it to do what I never could. Break the cycle. As the words blurred from my tears, Ryan scoffed. This is pathetic. She thinks she can run a billion-dollar company because she passed out soup in Detroit. That's when something inside me snapped, but not in the way they expected. Not a scream. Not a breakdown. No, I reached across the table and picked up the Mont Blanc pen Mr. Caldwell had placed beside the will. It probably cost more than my old car. I signed the documents with a single, fluid motion, one that felt like slicing through generations of oppression. Ryan jumped from his chair. She doesn't know anything about business. I looked up, dead in his eyes. Maybe not your kind of business. Then I turned to Daniel, whose face was redder than the mahogany behind him. You built an empire on shell companies, bribing journalists, and altered reports. I'm here to build something else. He opened his mouth to argue, but I reached for the second envelope, one I had prepared just in case the wolves showed their teeth. Inside, photos of Ryan nose-deep in a Vegas strip club, with a line of suspicious white powder on the table, and a woman with a badge that read security director laughing beside him. The photos were time-stamped, taken last week, conveniently when he was supposed to be working late. You don't have proof, Daniel growled. I didn't, I said, sliding the envelope across the table. Until 2 hours ago. Mr. Caldwell confirmed the documentation. Even he looked surprised. I wasn't. I had learned long ago that, in this family, truth wasn't something you discovered. It was something you prepared. Ryan was panicking, sputtering legal jargon, but I stayed calm. You can try to challenge the will. But when I go public with your fraud and your addiction, Whitmore Holdings will tank. And the vote of no confidence you're so scared of? That'll be the least of your worries. I stood up, adjusted my collar. We're scheduling a shareholders meeting for tomorrow. I'll see you there. Unless you'd prefer I schedule a press conference with the Wall Street Journal. Daniel didn't speak. For the first time in my life, the man who taught me silence was survival had none of his own. As I walked out of that office, Eleanor's letter pressed against my chest. I knew one thing for certain. I hadn't just inherited 51% of a company. I had inherited the responsibility of ending a dynasty of cruelty. And I would do it without ever having to get my hands dirty. They were already digging their own grave. The first thing I learned about power? It's not loud. It doesn't walk into the room yelling. It's the one that already owns the room and doesn't need to say a word. And the moment I stepped into the 58th floor corner office, my office now, I realized this war was never going to be about boardroom battles or press releases. It would be fought in whispers, buried clauses, and forged signatures. My nameplate was still warm when the first attack hit. It arrived in the form of Marcus, our CFO, sweating through his designer shirt as he placed a pristine report on my desk. There's a discrepancy with the Detroit Clinic Fund, he said, his eyes flicking to the door. $500,000 wired to a Cayman account. The authorization appears to be yours. He flipped the page, showing me a signature that looked almost perfect. Almost. The Y in Emily curled like Ryan's lazy handwriting always did. He never did pay attention in calligraphy class. Interesting, I said, leaning back, folding my hands. Same amount you dropped on that penthouse in Miami for your niece. Marcus froze, dead silent. I let the tension build, then threw the report back. You have until 5 p.m. to fix it. And by fix, I mean, I want the money back with interest. By the time the sun dipped below the skyline, I knew Ryan was behind it. And by sunrise, it was all over the media. CEO Emily Whitmore accused of diverting funds from charity clinics. They used photos of me hugging a patient in Detroit, edited for dramatic effect, because, of course, compassion in a woman equals corruption in their world. Worse was the reaction inside the building. Employees whisper behind their hands. Security guards avoided my gaze. The intern I helped get into college wouldn't even make eye contact. And that was the point. This wasn't about fraud. It was about humiliation. Corporate humiliation, designed to destabilize me before the next shareholders' meeting. But Ryan underestimated something. He thought this was my first war. He forgot I'd survived a childhood in the Whitmore house. And nothing teaches strategy like watching a narcissistic father weaponize love. That night, exhausted, I returned to my office, where a stack of paperwork waited like a wall between me and sleep. That's when I saw the envelope. No return address, no markings. Just my name in capital letters. Inside was a photograph. Me and Joseph, the janitor, outside the break room. I'd handed him an envelope with his raise the week before. Someone had written across the top in red pencil, "Whore of the poor." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at it until my fists trembled. Not from hurt, but from a fire so deep and quiet, it burned cold. Joseph found me an hour later, locked in the executive bathroom. He didn't say anything, just handed me a flash drive. "Worked for your grandfather," he said. "Fought with him in Nam. He told me to protect the family when he couldn't. Been watching ever since." On the drive, footage of Ryan sneaking into the IT office at 3:17 a.m., logging in, uploading files, tampering with system logs. It was time-stamped, verified, undeniable. There were also emails Ryan bribing journalists, offering them alter reports and incriminating recordings of conversations taken out of context. It was enough to burn him to the ground. The next morning, I called Marcus to my office. He walked in cocky until he saw the 2 security guards packing his desk behind me. I held up the flash drive. "You have 2 options," I said. "Sign this full confession detailing every shell company, every falsified transfer Ryan ordered you to make, or tell your wife about the Caymans." He signed in 10 minutes. That afternoon, Ryan stormed in, high on either fury or stimulants or both. "You think this little circus will stop me?" he spat. "Your evidence means nothing." "Oh, you're right," I said, calm as ever. "But this?" I slid the signed confession and a printed transcript of a phone call between him and the head of security across the table. "This is your grave, Ryan. I didn't get my hands dirty. You did that for me." For a moment, he just stood there. Then he laughed, dry and broken. "You think they'll still vote for you after this mess?" I leaned forward. "I don't need them to like me. I just need the truth on the table before the vote of no confidence. And trust me, they're going to love the part where you paid off the media." He left without another word. I sat there for a long time, alone with the silence. Not victory, not revenge, just the kind of peace that comes after you stop asking for your father's approval. And when the sun rose again over Manhattan, I was ready. Because now, I wasn't just surviving Whitmore Holdings. I was rebuilding it. One secret at a time. They say power isolates you. But it's not the loneliness that's loud, it's the silence. The kind that wraps around you after the headlines fade, and the victory champagne goes flat. That's the silence I sat in, staring at the mountain of fraudulent contracts, offshore accounts, and forged supplier agreements Ryan left behind. Whitmore Holdings wasn't just bleeding. It had been quietly gutted over years of corruption, and I was expected to make it whole overnight. That morning, the rain tapped against the glass of my office like a ticking clock. I hadn't slept. My hands hovered over spreadsheets, emails, and legal briefs. Documents so tangled with deceit, I could feel them fighting back. That's when I heard it. 3 soft knocks. Precise. Intentional. Almost surgical. Joseph entered without waiting for permission. He was still in his janitor uniform, medals from Vietnam gleaming subtly on his chest like forgotten war stories. But in that moment, he didn't look like a janitor. He looked like a soldier on a mission. "I think you'll want to see this, Ms. Whitmore," he said, placing an old military-grade storage box on my desk. I recognized it immediately. It had lived in a locked closet on the 58th floor for as long as I could remember. No one ever questioned it. No one ever opened it. Inside were stacks of documents, each labeled in thick, handwritten Sharpa. Ryan, procurement fraud 2018, South African bribes, contract rigging, Europe division, names, dates, figures, all organized with a kind of obsessive precision that made my skin crawl. "You documented all of this?" I asked, stunned. My voice cracked. Joseph nodded. "Your grandfather saved my life in Kisan." I told him I'd watch the family. That meant watching everything, especially the parts no one wanted to see. There was one file thicker than the rest. A $3 million transfer to a fake supplier in the Bahamas, signed off under the name Eleanor Whitmore. That was the moment my breath caught in my throat. Ryan had forged our grandmother's name. Even in death, he was still exploiting her. But Joseph wasn't done. From his pocket, he slid out a plain envelope. Inside were photos. Ryan in a dim East Side bar, handing off an envelope to none other than Richard Bloom, the same journalist who published the hit piece against me. The timestamp? 2 days before the article went live. "Why now?" I asked genuinely. "Why didn't you bring this to my father?" Joseph's expression hardened like storm clouds before a downpour. "Your father always knew. He just didn't care. Or worse, he chose not to." That truth cut deeper than any betrayal. Not just that Daniel was complicit, but that he had actively chosen blindness over justice. That's when the final puzzle piece clicked. This wasn't just about Ryan. It never was. It was about a legacy built on silence. My hand stopped shaking. My breath steadied. "Call the board," I said, standing up. "Tomorrow, 7 a.m. And Joseph, "Yes, Ms. Whitmore?" "After tomorrow, you're not cleaning floors anymore. You're cleaning house. Effective immediately. You're the new director of security." The man smiled for the first time in 16 years. Not a smirk, not a nod, an honest-to-God smile. "Been ready for years, boss." After he left, I looked across the office at the framed portrait of Eleanor on the wall. Her eyes seemed to follow me, calm and calculating. I finally understood her move. She didn't leave me 51% to win. She left me the means to rebuild with honor, strategy, and allies born not of blood, but of loyalty. The clock ticked forward, echoing through the room. And for the first time in decades, I wasn't fighting alone. I had an army, and the first soldier was wearing a janitor's badge for now. The 60th floor conference room of Whitmore Tower smelled like tension masked by overpriced cologne. Polished oak table, leather chairs, Italian espresso on tap, and a circle of men, mostly older, mostly gray-haired, who had already decided how this meeting would end. They weren't here to vote. They were here to bury me. Or so they thought. Ryan sat to my right, legs crossed, fingers tapping a smug rhythm on the table. That Brioni suit he wore? A costume, a distraction from the panic behind his eyes. I watched him lean toward Richard Bloom, the Wall Street Journal reporter who had weaponized my compassion in that hit piece, and exchange a knowing smirk. This wasn't just a decisive shareholders meeting. It was a chessboard, and they thought I was still playing checkers. Then came the entrance I'd been waiting for. Daniel Whitmore himself, my father, walked in like a fallen emperor still clinging to the illusion of control. He didn't look at me. He didn't need to. His mere presence was meant to rattle me, to remind me who had built this company. But I didn't flinch. Marcus, the CFO turned turncoat turned liability, kicked things off. In light of recent media concerns surrounding Ms. Whitmore's leadership, I move for a vote of no confidence. He gestured to the screen as headlines flashed. Charity Queen or corporate disaster? Followed by manipulated graphs showing a fictional 18% stock drop. Ryan rose like a knight in shining privilege. Nobody wants to see this company fail, he said, faux sincerity oozing from every word. But leadership has to be earned, and charity work doesn't translate to shareholder returns. That was his cue. That was the moment I was supposed to defend myself. Apologize, beg, cry. But instead, the door creaked open, and in walked Joseph. Not in a janitor's uniform, no. He wore a gray suit, sleeves rolled, eyes steady. He pushed a rusty service cart straight into the middle of the room. Apologies for the interruption, he said with the same tone he used to mop floors. Ms. Whitmore forgot something upstairs. From the cart, I lifted the dented steel box, Eleanor's old file chest, and opened it with a satisfying click. First, I pulled out her pocket watch, the one she carried to every board meeting she ever attended. I held it up for a beat, then set it down next to my glass of water. Then I began. Since we're talking about numbers, I said, unfolding document after document, let's review the real ones. Bank transfers, vendor kickbacks, shell companies linked directly to Ryan's name, a paper trail of accounting fraud that painted a very different picture of who was damaging Whitmore Holdings. I slid copies down the table as faces began to pale. And here's the kicker, the signature, Eleanor Whitmore. Forged by her own grandson to steal millions. Ryan's smirk crumbled. You can't prove. Joseph stepped forward and clicked a remote. The wall screens flickered. Surveillance footage played. Ryan in the IT department at 3:17 a.m., logging into systems, uploading Alter reports. A collective gasp. One man dropped his pen. Another leaned back like he'd been punched. And then I played the audio. The incriminating recording between Ryan and Marcus, negotiating how to bribe journalists, including Bloom, to tank my reputation. The same voice that once said I was a nobody in a thrift store blazer was now begging Marcus to make the press shut her down. You want to vote? I said, calm as the sea before a hurricane. Let's vote. The room went still. I didn't need a show of hands. The silence was its own verdict. One by one, the board members pushed away the reports Ryan had handed them. Nobody looked in his direction, not even Bloom, who had the decency to pack his recorder in silence. Ryan exploded. This is invasion of privacy. None of this was legal, he shouted, his voice cracking. She manipulated everything. This is revenge. I stood up. You're right about one thing. I reached for the pocket watch. It is revenge, but not mine. This is Eleanor's. This is justice. And justice doesn't need to shout. Daniel finally looked at me. There was something in his eyes, recognition maybe, or defeat, or a sliver of pride so deeply buried it almost didn't register. He didn't say a word, just nodded, barely perceptible, then stood, straightened his coat and walked out. After the room cleared, Joseph poured 2 glasses of champagne, leftover from a celebration someone once planned for Ryan. To the new era, he said. I raised my glass. To the end of the old one. And in the silence that followed, the ticking of Eleanor's pocket watch never sounded sweeter. 6 months later, the boardroom didn't feel like a battlefield anymore. It felt like a cathedral. Sunlight poured through the newly installed floor-to-ceiling windows, replacing the heavy curtains my father insisted on for privacy. I wanted transparency, literal and metaphorical. The thick mahogany table? Replaced. The oil painting of my grandfather? Replaced by a black and white photo of my grandmother, Eleanor, smiling with a clarity that now echoed through every policy I signed. We weren't just back on track. We were thriving. A 12% growth since I took over. Not by inflating profits or gutting payroll, but by cutting ties with shell companies, realigning with social impact, and investing in the one thing our family had always avoided: people. The same Detroit clinic they mocked was now the face of Whitmore Holdings' new direction, our most profitable division. Imagine that. Joseph, now officially director of security, walked in with his usual no-nonsense energy, dropping a quarterly report and a sealed envelope onto my desk. "Anonymous," he said with a half shrug, "but you're going to want to see it." Inside, a single sheet of paper, a wire transfer slip from an offshore account. $5 million, donated directly to the pediatric wing of the hospital I once ran. No signature, just a handwritten note at the bottom. "Maybe you always understood what it meant to be a Whitmore better than any of us." I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just sat back in my chair and let it settle over me like the first calm after a storm. Daniel would never apologize. Ryan would never come back. And maybe that was okay. Redemption doesn't always wear a suit or say the right words. Sometimes it shows up as an anonymous donation to a place you once believed in when no one else did. That night, I walked the halls of Whitmore Tower, now lined with photos, not of board members or IPO celebrations, but of the families we helped, the employees we promoted, the lives we changed. At the elevator, Joseph waited, coat in hand. "Where to, boss?" I smiled, adjusted my collar. "Home, Joseph." And for the first time in my life, the word didn't taste like a lie.